Hi, it's Chris with Implied Music, and today we're looking at open voicings. Open voicings spread wider than an octave, and it gives you a stronger, more elegant sound for epic music, for scoring, even for creating space in an arrangement for a vocalist. Open voicings are the way to go, but you've got to make choices about how to manage them. So I've got 6 short examples to take a look at today. Well, first of all, if this is the second or third video of mine you've seen and you're getting something out of the channel and you're not subscribed, please subscribe. We're building a community of songwriters, arrangers, producers who want to use conventional music theory and maybe some unique and original tricks and tips to serve their own musical interests. This isn't an academic thing. It's more like a how can I get that sound sort of thing, which is, when you get right down to it, kind of what I always wanted when I was learning how to do this stuff. I hope this is music theory for everyone. Well, I was just on the phone with my friend and I said, I'm going to put together a video about open voicings. And they said, spread the love. It does sound a little bit like that, doesn't it? Open voicings are a way of managing simple chords to make them just sound a little bit bigger and thicker. I'll show you what I mean. So just look down at the keyboard and you can see when I play a simple triad, those 3 notes, C, E, and G, all fall easily in a pretty narrow range. It's the range of a fifth. And it's a okay sound and not very thick. But there's a couple of approaches to making that sound bigger and more interesting. And the first and simplest one is to take, like, say, the middle note and play it down at the bottom. It's actually called drop 2. We've got a very specific example of that later on. A drop 2 voicing will give you some interesting intervals, this beautiful 6th, so elegant. And then the 5th is on top. And the outer voices are, it says minor 3rd here, but really it's a 10th. It's just a lovely sound. And drop 2 triads will almost always sound more interesting than simple triads, right? Well, when you get a chord progression that has, say, 7th chords, like our first example, which is D minor 7, G7, and you play them in close voicings, under an octave, that's a 7th, under an octave, that's a 6th. That's going to give you kind of a tightly packed spacing. And so our first example just opens that out. This is what it sounds like. There's my example, D minor 7 to G7. But if we spread that out so that the 3rd's on the bottom and we have that wide spread sound, we get a really nice effect. Now, all I've done is play simple arpeggios, and this makes for a pretty powerful sound. And it's worth talking about here. Now, we've been talking about the slide modulation, where D minor, the F in the D minor chord becomes the not minor 3rd as it is in D minor, but the major 3rd of D flat major. And since we've got D minor 7, we're going to keep both of those notes. And now the C and the F will become the major 7th and major 3rd of D flat major 7. This is a beautiful sound. And it's the sound I used as I made the transition at measure 7. Here comes the D flat. It's so beautiful, right? Well, this would make a much better support for a melody or a vocalist than just the close voicings that we showed first. Let's go to our second example. Our second example is major 7 chords. And of course, major 7 chords have this kind of I think, summary sort of quality. And we're using simple root and second inversion versions of them here, but we can take a note from down below and flip it up to the top. So this easy version of it, kind of easy to play with one hand, gets parsed out to two hands. I'm playing two notes in the right hand and two notes in the left. So it's actually a pretty cool trick. The left hand plays the root and the fifth, and the right hand takes over with the seventh and the third. And then that's the B flat major, and it's an open voicing. And then it really has the same effect when I move to E flat 7. Now I've got the root and the fifth in the left hand, and the third and the seventh. The jobs sort of invert, but the right hand is still doing thirds and sevenths. The left hand is doing roots and fifths. Same thing with the A flat, right? To the D flat. Now, because I have two hands, I can do my favorite drumming trick, which is to do 3 against 2. So if you look at the right hand, it's got this busy little pattern. Looks like a lot of notes. That's dividing the beat in 3. Down below, the left hand divides the beat in 2, and you get a polyrhythm. The right hand's 2 notes create an interesting offset. It's still 3 against 2, but I'm doing 2 notes, so the phrase is a little bit weird. Now, it's worth noting that the next thing that happens creates a really great effect, because that right hand part, now instead of doing this, is going to do this. To A, and then to G, to A, and then to G. I'm still doing a triplet, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But because there's 4 notes in the phrase and it's a triplet, I'm actually crossing that bar line, so to speak, as well. It's a complicated effect, but not terribly hard to do. Do you hear that middle voice oscillating? This is a classic minimalist composer arranger trick. Let's go on. Well, here's a slide. C minor 7 to B major 7. And we're going to invert that as well. The fifths are on the bottom now, and so we get seconds on top. And that's great for arpeggios, or maybe even figured arpeggios. If we wanted to create an irregular rhythm, say an odd meter, we could vary the number of times we play those top 2 notes and create a little melody. I built a turnaround in there, F minor 7. Again, this would make a great accompaniment for a melody, or, hand it off to a singer. Wonderful on harp. All right. Our next example is the axis chords, D, A, B minor, G. In other words, 1, 5, 6, 4. And here's an open voiced version of it. Sounds a lot better, doesn't it? I'm going to play that open voiced version again. And the open voices create a melody that descends. D down to C sharp, down to B, stay on B. Since I'm only using 4 voices, I'm not worrying about doubling too much. But, if you're just playing triads and you use 4 voices, one of the notes will be repeated. Here there's an F sharp, a D, an A, and another D. If you look at all of these chords, you'll notice that I never double, make 2 different thirds in a chord. I don't want to double the third in the chord, because the third in the chord carries so much information, and you have to manage it. It has to move smoothly to the next place. And so if you have 2 thirds, you get really locked in. Well, for this little pattern, again, I have a drumming pattern, 2 notes in the right, 2 notes in the left, and another 2 against 3. This time I'm just playing all the notes at once, and this would be kind of a propulsive sort of thing. Now, for the first time through, it's simple. And for the second time through, I use the same trick. that I used previously. I'm just going to change the bottom note every 2 notes. So now you have a feeling of a couple of rhythmic lanes happening at the same time. Not terribly hard to do. I suggest you try practicing it if you're a keyboard player. It's probably possible to do finger picking on guitar as well. Okay, we're going to go on. Just let it roll. So here's a close-voiced version of the melody Shenandoah. Each triad is a fairly simple chord, and the melody is on the top. The top note is the melody, and it's the note we hear. Some of those triads are suspended chords. Some of them, the melody is a passing tone to the chord, and so you'll have a moment where it just feels a little dissonant. It's not the chord exactly that you expect, but the net result is we hear both the harmony and the melody. On guitar, good guitarists do this all the time. They call it chord melody, and it's not an unusual way to harmonize a melody for piano arrangements as well, when the melody is important to hear. But perhaps a better way to do that kind of arranging for strings or horns is to grab the middle voice from that simple triad and flip it down an octave. So here's a drop 2 version. It's exactly the same. Here's a drop 2 version of that same arrangement, and it's thicker. The bottom voice begins to have its own identity. This would be beautiful for a choral arrangement, wouldn't it? Or in strings or winds. And these are just normal, like beautiful diatonic chords. The chords that we expect. Shenandoah is a beautiful melody. It's a strong melody. And strong melodies invite something that my teacher used to call coupling. I think a lot of people now call it planing. I still have coupling in my head. It's where you follow the melody with exact copies of that melodic tone at some interval. It could be diatonic. And in a way, what we just heard was a sort of planing. It was diatonic planing. But imagine chromatic planing or chromatic coupling. If the melody is tracked by stacked fourths, then you get a kind of a beautiful effect. It's not strictly speaking an open voicing because, it's a seventh, a minor seventh when you stack fourths like that. But the net result is a kind of an open-ended, emotionally open harmony. Listen. Basically, it's the same melody duplicated at 3 different pitch levels. I've added the B drone just to kind of give it some color. And we still hear this as Shenandoah. Jazz musicians, jazz pianists especially, and also guitarists, use chromatic coupling, particularly in fourths, frequently to create, textures that push outside the confines of the diatonic box. And it's a powerful effect. Well, easy to play close voicings, easy to sort of grab them under your hand or just grab a simple cluster on guitar. But open voicings will always have that little something extra. And it's a great choice for string writing. The easiest thing to do is to figure out what the notes of a close voicing is, grab the middle voice and flip it down an octave. Careful of your doublings. Don't double the third. Don't double the seventh. You can have as many roots and fifths as you'd like. Well, listen, I hope this has been useful. Like and subscribe, ding the bell, leave me a comment. I want to know if this kind of thing is useful for you. And I'll see you next time.